Hi, my name is Chris Dixon. This is Founder Stories. Today we have Ries, the author of The Lean Startup, and a noted business thinker and I guess an entrepreneur, former entrepreneur. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So what's your background first?
Well, you should know that I grew up as a programmer. So I've been programming computers as long as I can remember. Probably the best day of my life was when I found out you could get paid for programming.
What was your first computer?
My very first computer was an old IBM XT my parents had in their study, and I remember learning how to hack that thing with the old 5 1/4-inch floppy disk. Yeah. First computer that was mine was a first edition original Mac Plus, beige edition with a giant 20 megabyte hard drive. So that was one of the great days of my life, getting to play with that. And you know, I became an entrepreneur in the dot-com bubble like everybody else, and thought.
What company did you start then?
I did a company out of my dorm. Get this, our idea was to have college students create online profiles for the purpose of sharing. Okay. Pretty good, but we thought they should share them with employers to get a job. So we thought we should try to build a real business, something with a real revenue and business model from the beginning. And of course, we had no clue how to turn our pretty cool product idea into a business.
What year was this? Was like 90.
This is 99, 2000, okay. And when the bubble crashed, we were completely toast. All you have to know about the.
Did you raise like financing?
Yeah, we set a couple $100,000 on fire, pretty much. And all you need to know about the people who invested in us is...
It's actually a relatively small amount.
For those days, listen,
yeah.
Luckily we were in New Haven, Connecticut, so it's like we were the very last city in America to get the news about the bubble right before it burst. So we could have caused a lot more damage, except that we went out of business. I like to say we had the first half of the social network experience. You know, just like the movies, worked just as hard, had just as cool a team.
A lot of stuff was around then, like 6 Degrees and these. I mean, I think when you go back and you look at all the successful startups of this decade, most of those ideas had percolated at some point back then. They just didn't get traction, right? I mean, like YouTube, all sorts of things like that.
The idea itself, not actually that important.
Yeah, and so then what'd you do? So that crashed.
That crashed, and I thought, all right, I'm going to apprentice myself to some real successful entrepreneurs. I wanted to learn professional entrepreneurship, so I moved to Silicon Valley, of course, and I joined a really hot company that was in stealth mode, a big virtual worlds company from early 2000s, a Second Life competitor. And they spent we raised something like $50 million and spent 5 years in stealth R&D. So
what was the company called?
It was called There.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And it was great.
5 years in stealth.
Yeah, one of the most talented teams I've ever had the privilege not just to work for, but work with. And if you look at the total, valuation of all the companies that were created by their people, it's staggering. I mean, it really was a talented group. But it was classic waterfall development from, straight on from the business plan to building a mainstream product for mainstream customers, huge launch. And when the early adopter results didn't live up to the expectations, it was kind of painful even to think about. Like I still feel sad about it.
So basically, I mean, this sounds like we'll get to the lean startup thing, but this would not be a lean startup.
No, it's almost exactly opposite in every respect. And in fact, I don't think that I would be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't had that experience. Not only was it really painful, it was so embarrassing and humiliating. All your friends who were like, "Oh, were you working at the secret thing and all this thing?" People are naturally cynical.
Were you actually working on it for 5 years?
Was that? No, I was there from 2001 to 2004, so for 3 years. So it had already been in progress 2 years.
Were they doing any kind of like user testing and things? Or?
Here's the cool thing about it: we did tons of user testing, tons of focus groups. I remember sitting in focus groups and asking customers, "Would you pay for this?" Everyone's like, "Oh, of course." Somehow, the focus groups always told us what we wanted to hear. Every time we'd have a market person, a usability person, they'd come back and they'd have some tweaks for us. Hey, product development, you should add these 3 more features. But the fundamental business thesis was always confirmed.
And so this is one of these, it's like Second Life. You go into a virtual world, you interact and
play games. You could create your own virtual objects. It really did have a lot of the elements that would prove to be successful later on.
But did they prove? I mean, because then Second Life has sort of fizzled, right? I don't know.
Well, that's a matter of debate.
Okay, I don't even know.
No, what we thought was that.
I mean, I don't know. I've heard they're doing. I don't know. I've heard mixed reports, so I don't actually.
I don't have any inside information there.
Disparage them
No. I think that what you would call the virtual worlds, like business, the kind of direct translation of the metaverse from something like Snow Crash into PCs. That we thought that was going to be a superset.
It seemed like the ones that succeeded are basically like World of Warcraft, where you kill stuff.
Exactly right. You
can't kill stuff, like no one, or Sims maybe or something.
Yeah, we thought a video game that was more general purpose would be more mass market, and we had it exactly backwards. That the more general purpose is, the less concrete structure it has. Actually, the more niche it is, rather than the more mainstream.
Interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, we basically
so you need to have sort of this
wrong.
like
there's, like, it's not
like
the most
Sims
shocking
is about
thing.
like romance and I don't know what. I've never even played the
Yeah,
Sims.
it has
World
to,
of Warcraft
it has
I
to
played. You
speak
kill
to a
wolves and,
specific
like, yeah,
use case and a specific need that customers have. And the virtual worlds business, especially the stuff that's inspired by science fiction, is just incredibly general and therefore incredibly difficult.
And so, what happened? So you launched it, and you just gotten it wrong, and people didn't have any interest in it, or
Yeah, the company had about 200 employees by the time customers saw the product for the first time. Okay, so that's part
I
of the
vaguely
problem.
remember there.
Yeah, just so that it wasn't even, and the company had early adopters, and it had an early adopter business. It's not like it was a total disaster.
But given the amount of money invested,
given the expectations, it was too difficult. The company, because it was all waterfall and had grown so fast, also was having trouble shipping new versions of the product. I mean, there's all the kind of problems you have with this kind of large batch development process all played out. So at the very time the company needed to pivot, it was too bureaucratic and too kind of locked into the momentum of how it was going to make that change. So it's kind of a double whammy. And the company limped along for years afterwards. I mean, it actually wound up spawning a defense contracting business that did simulation training. I mean, like, good stuff did come out of it, but the original investors and employees were all wiped out, and I was pretty depressed.
And then what did you do?
So a couple of us who had worked there eventually became founders of a company called InView, which we wanted to kind of take another stab at the 3D avatar, online socializing technology, but we wanted to try to do things differently. And so when we built InView, we had some different product ideas. We were going to try a lightweight rather than a heavyweight experience, but primarily we were interested in trying a different process by which we would build the company. So instead of spending years and millions of dollars in stealth mode, we put a product in customers' hands in full open public beta in 6 months. From day we launched the company to day we were in public beta was 180 days. I was the CTO of this company, so I'll be the first to admit the product totally sucked. I mean, it would crash, it was buggy, it had all kinds of quality problems. And I was personally pretty embarrassed, to put this thing out there, and people were telling me like my professional reputation was at stake. I had this image in my mind. In the newspaper, some journalists would like see our early beta and write this article, idiots at IMVU don't know what quality software means, film at 5. But the nice part was that when we finally shipped it, no one would even try it. And so at least nobody found out how bad it was. But actually that wasn't good at all. That was actually really depressing, even more depressing than what we had done before. We thought we were being really lean, although we didn't have that jargon back then. We thought we had built a minimum viable product, but in the end, what we realized, we eventually had to pivot from our original strategy, and we can get into that, but we realized that we'd actually done a very expensive experiment based on the assumption that people would actually want to try this kind of experience. We had built this IM add-on interoperability thing. And when we realized that we had to build a standalone IM network, it turned all of that really valuable code into waste, instantly. And then we started to ask this question, well, how could we have found out that information sooner? And that question about how could we run the experiment more efficiently, more quickly, that's really at the heart of what eventually became the Lean Startup.
And how's that? So that company is I guess you've left, but it continues.
Yeah, I spent about 5 years building the company. It is now profitable, about 100 or 120 employees in Mountain View. I'm very proud of it.
Still very lean.
Still very lean, still very private, and still very profitable.